Hi, I'm Jim. Welcome to the Unbound Performance Podcast, where we explore the world of sports and performance mindset training.
And I'm Caroline. Each week we talk about the strategies, habits, and mental framework that help us to excel. Let's get into today's episode. Yeah, so social media.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're both going to have two different sides. I don't mean like opposing sides, but like
Two different angles, which is common.
Right.
Like men and women, boys, girls tend to experience social media differently.
Well, and I grew up with it somewhat, and you didn't. But now you have kids who are growing up with it, and mine will have some other whole new, I don't know what they're going to have.
Yes.
So I think that's going to be hopefully a riveting conversation.
Since when isn't? Yeah, I know, we're thoroughly riveting. What made you want to talk about this?
When I went to Campbell and spoke in March. What month was Women's Empowerment Month? Just kidding.
No idea.
I think it was in March. I spoke for an hour and some, and the portion where I discussed social media and the things that like you feed your brain, you feed your mind, and the things that you start believing, even if they aren't true, seem to resonate a lot with those girls. They work it so that what gets sent to you is applicable to you and what you've liked before, and what gets sent to me is things that I have either talked about in person because my phone hears us, or things that I have looked and liked or commented on or shared, whatever. Something that I see a lot on social media is this, and I think this is part of this like women's empowerment feminism movement that we're seeing happen right now, which, listen, I don't like the word feminism, but I'm not going to be your typical like, yes, women, everything. That's not me. I don't tend to be that. Like, I mean, yes, I am for women, but I'm not of like that we need some upper hand because we can't do it ourselves. I don't buy into that. Something that I see on social media a lot is, things that you consume on social media are intended to grab you. They're intended to inspire you, to get your attention, to get your response, to get you to share it, to like it, whatever. So I feel like I'm seeing a lot of content that glamorizes a selfish act as a selfless act. So for example, a lot of this like stuff that I'm seeing in the women's space is cut out the people in your life that are not helping you. Cut out your husband. Cut out your, like, if it's not working for you, you need to choose yourself and move on. Like it's very quick and abrupt to like cut ties with things or cut out, or it's a lot of it, but it's built around this like you need to choose yourself, choose you. You are important, which absolutely, yes. But let's not make rash decisions in chaos without considering the breadth and the depth of what that decision might make. And so I feel like a lot of the times the things that I see sound encouraging and sound motivating and sound like this is the right thing. But when you get down to the deep reality of cutting people out of your life, or just like, it's one thing to cut a bad habit or to cut a person who is toxic or whatever bad in your life. But to just say that, like, if you're not with me, then you're against me and move on, I think is a scenario specific way to view things.
Yeah. I mean, I think that seems rather ugly.
Yeah.
I would not. That doesn't align with my worldview, where we just casually dismiss people.
Things that aren't working for us.
And it also doesn't align with a worldview that it's all about me, yes. Whereas I would almost posit the opposite of,
yes.
of that, in the sense that
it's literally should never kind of.
I want to. My me thing is about helping other people.
Me, how I help others. Yeah.
And that's got nothing to do with me taking a spa day or something like that. I mean,
do you need to do that?
Self-care and all that. I mean, obviously we need to care for ourselves. But sure. That's I still remember hearing Jordan Peterson talk about advice he gave to one of his patients. It was a woman. She had social anxiety, invited to a cocktail party, very nervous about that whole experience. And his advice was go there and spend the entire time trying to make sure that everyone else has a really good time. And she
don't think about yourself in your situation.
She took her eye off herself and did that, and bingo.
Yeah.
And that's I don't know, that's a small example of like what is going to bring us peace and satisfaction. I don't think it's just think about ourselves all the time.
Yeah.
Pretty sure it's the opposite of that.
Well, and as quickly as I mean, just the speed with which like new phrases or words pop up that kids are using now, which, by the way,
I know I never know what my kids are talking
Like-
about, but guess what? I don't feel any pressure to learn those goofy little words either.
fair. I appreciate that. But as quickly as things can, for lack of a better phrase, go viral or become normal or become just so in your face, you know, the concept of like girl math. Or like if I go return $100 worth of things at Target, that means that I now have $100 to spend at Target that's free. That's an example of like girl math. That's what they're calling it on the internet. That's not
Are they
free.
really?
Oh yeah, girl math is a whole thing. And it's all things like that where like,
Pretty sure it's not confined to girls though.
I mean, totally agree. But like, oh well, I get, you know, my nails done twice a month and it costs this much, which is only actually 30 cents a day, and that's not really so bad. It's like these ways to like justify
Right.
typically spending, right? But same thing with self-care. It's like something, again, I suspect I see way different stuff on my Instagram than you see on yours. Which is going to make this conversation exciting. And like, I don't like this stuff. I mean, and by like, I mean like I don't hit the heart. Like I like it, but it just it knows my age and my sex,
Right.
and so it's going to give me things that are apparently relevant to me in my life. But like the idea of needing this, I don't know what the phrase is, and listen, kids that listen to this or younger kids are going to like laugh at us for. They're going to think I'm old, and they're going to think you're just even older.
That's because
We are.
we are.
But this idea of like little treating yourself, like, oh, well, I had a hard day, so I'm gonna, you know, get a $9 coffee, make myself feel better, and listen, treat yourself, like, but like to justify doing it every single day and then suddenly you're broke because it's just these like constantly justifying these things as like self-care or selflessness or focusing on me, that the reality is there are way bigger impacts than just you like this is those scenarios are just this one little.
I'm the told. You want to feel better? Go train. Like,
Go read a book.
yes, like go help someone.
Mm-hmm.
I don't. I have nothing against pleasure per se.
Right.
But
It's not that you can't have a delicious coffee that happens to be $9 from time to time,
yeah, I mean,
but as a like
yeah.
as a fix to something, like what's the actual thing you're trying to fix there?
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just that
Well,
I feel like
there's a reason
right.
those messages get sent. Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're trying to manipulate behavior.
Yes. And then you fall in this victim mentality of like, okay, then you're learning that kids these days can't afford to buy a house. Well, I didn't buy $9 a day lattes when I was 18 and get my nails done and get my lashes done. And right, like I had one pair of designer jeans for all 4 years of high school. That was it. I didn't have like, it wasn't like I wasn't walking around with $600 Golden Goose shoes as a sophomore. Like that just wasn't a thing. But now, and again, like not saying that those things are bad, but when you don't understand what it takes to get there or the sacrifices to have those things, or if you do them and you don't actually have the finances to actually afford them, well, you're going to have negative ramifications on the back end.
Well, how old were you when you were first on social media?
I think my sophomore year, I had friends who were in college, because at that time you had to get Facebook, had to have a college email address. And there was some way that if you knew someone in college, you could use their email.
Right.
They could invite you somehow.
Kind of college-only platform.
Yes. And so it was Facebook, but at that time, I think at that time it was just like posting a status. Like you had a profile picture and like, you know, age, North Carolina, like whatever. But I don't even think you could like message somebody. I don't even know if you could like comment back. I think it was just like you could like poke someone. Remember the poke thing on Facebook? You could like poke, like, and you could post a status. But by the time I didn't even have like, I had Instagram in college, but reels weren't a thing. Scrolling like other content of your feed that is not people that you follow was not part of it.
Right.
You posted static photos on your feed and people could either like them or comment on them, and that was pretty much it. It wasn't this unlimited resource where you could search for categories and find videos that were related to that, or I mean, I'm sure there was an algorithm at that point, but it was clearly not nearly as in tune with my personal life as it is today.
But that's the point where like you were close to having a brain that was fully formed, like that generally is done by mid-20s.
Sure.
But you sure weren't experiencing what is experienced now.
Oh, not even close.
When you're at your most vulnerable developmentally.
And before you even step into that, the age at which kids are getting this in their development, when I just think about me now at 35 and the things that I see on the internet and have to actively tell myself, that's not reality, that's not real,
Right.
that's not realistic, that's not an ideal. No, I at least have the wherewithal to say, that's not realistic, that's not achievable, that's the highest level of beauty or satisfaction or something we can strive for that's just not your average person. Because you see highlight films on the internet. You don't see all the behind the scenes stuff. So just thinking through me as an adult, recognizing that and having to still tell myself on repeat, like, this isn't real, this is not realistic, this is not achievable. I can't imagine what a person 20 years younger than me, or even younger, because 20 years younger would be 15? Kids are having social media way before then too. So just thinking through, like, at what point of brain development, self-confidence, self-awareness, social norms, like, I just think that what kids are exposed to is just, I hate the word toxic, but 100% toxic.
Well, that's, I sent you a link to Jonathan Haidt's latest book, The Anxious Generation, which I couldn't recommend more enthusiastically. It talks all about the effect of all this. It's not just on children, but because children are at a far more vulnerable stage of development than adults are, there's a lot in there. And, when I grew up forever ago, I mean, we just went out and played and we worked things out, and you learned all these social skills and your physical, through experience. And that is,
and failure. And
he makes the point over and over, like, that's how you learn through experience, not through information.
Yes.
And we've moved from a play-based childhood to a phone-based childhood, which
kids can't even sit in the room and talk to each other now. They sit in the room together and they text each other.
Right. It is not how humans have lived and raised children ever until quite recently.
Yeah.
And I still remember seeing kids taking selfie pictures for the first time and making faces and
the poses.
I'm just like, what are you doing? And they were saying how they had to keep their, in the words of Bill Belichick, their snap face alive, or whatever I remember he called it, a snap face in the press conference. They had some streak they had to keep going.
Yeah, I don't know.
And I was so stunned at this latest development and this push towards, let's see if we can raise kids to be as narcissistic as possible. And I'm amazed. Like, I have a policy, if someone puts a selfie picture or video, I try to never like it. Never, because I'm like, that's my small little way of saying stop doing that.
Yeah.
And now, adults do it. Yeah. I know that makes me sound like the Clint Eastwood character, get off my lawn or whatever. But that's such a big hell no for me in terms of who I want to be, who I want our kids to be.
Yeah.
That I just cannot abide it.
Well, I just think of the simple, on the selfie conversation, I think of the simple, if you opened up two Instagram profiles, let's say, two people, and one was full of selfies, and one was full of pictures from the mountains, and pictures of their dog, and pictures of their friends, and a family at Christmas, and just judging a book by its cover, which person do you think is more down to earth? Right?
Oh, yeah.
Immediate.
Yeah.
Yet, the perception is that if I post selfies, and I know that saying selfies of myself is redundant, but that's what I felt compelled to say. If the idea is that if you post selfies, you're making yourself look good. Like, you're posed, you're dressed, your makeup is done, you're at a cool place, you have some cool little wordsmith caption down below. And so the people delivering those think it's helping them. But most people on the outside looking in, I don't think are viewing that as attractive. And I don't just mean from a physical perspective, but just attractive as just someone you want to be around.
I guess people at a certain age, maybe not. But I think kids or whoever's doing it, they're all thinking this is normal.
Well,
and
my niece, when she was 18, was talking about that, guys her age only wanted to date girls that were TikTok famous. And at that time, for me, that was that idea that they were just average people at college who were TikTok famous. I've never had TikTok. I never will. It didn't occur to me that there were enough of those to make that a criteria for who you date. But the reality is, like, what is that criteria? That is not a qualitative criteria for a mate, a partner.
Well, we're moving from
Right.
a reality, experiential, human interaction based existence to this virtual
Yes.
world that
Where you don't
you don't have any of that.
Well, you create that virtual world to be what's easy for you and what you want, and you
Exactly.
can avoid all of the difficulties or struggles of the real world. But the reality is, you can't live in there forever.
Some people
Are
that's
trying to.
yeah, which is really
horrifying.
awful because it's such a shallow existence. It's not why we're here.
Right.
And I know I had a conversation this morning. His name's Thomas, and he's 73. He is, or will be. It was such a powerful and meaningful conversation for both of us. In person, standing there in the parking lot. And it was, I don't know, maybe half an hour. I'm sure I'm going to remember that conversation maybe forever.
Yeah.
He is exceedingly thoughtful and good and inspiring to me. But if I just walked around with my headphones on or with some VR thing,
That's
like,
wild to me.
I mean, I've read things where like people won't even, like a boy won't even try to get a girlfriend because it's difficult. Like, so instead you can just have an imaginary pornographic girlfriend and
chat with her online or whatever.
It's such a false view of humanity.
Well, not just like what does that look like for the long term, for the rest of your life? Like what is that doing for you? I feel like something else, and sort of to that vein of you having that conversation with him in person, is like if you and I did this and you sat at home on your laptop and I sat at home on mine and we did it Zoom, that would be a different delivery than us sitting here in person doing it. When content creators post their content, so let's say it's on theme content, so like, you know, my last business was a home design business, so we were primarily posting interior design. But it's important to connect with your followers and connect with your viewers, and so you share enough personal things to make them kind of get comfortable with you as a person outside of just like, I know how to decorate a room. But very quickly, people who follow you, if you let them in to a personal side where they feel like they know you, it opens up a whole world where they want to ask you questions that, like, they're a complete stranger, but they think that they have the right to know X, Y, and Z about you, or to talk about you in a conversation as if they know you. And something that I struggled with was feeling like as soon as that page took off for us, like, people suddenly are talking to you that wouldn't talk to you before, or are posting on their personal page and tagging you in it as if like you're their friend, or wanting to. I had one person at one point, I was really good friends with another content creator, and this was someone that I knew, but she literally said, like, I would love to hang out with you guys and just get a glimpse of what that friendship looks like in person. And that just struck me in such a weird way that, like, so what she sees on social media of my stuff and that friend's stuff, and she knows that the two of us are friends, and she wanted to just get to experience that in person. I think people want to, like, be a part of that circle, especially for content creators who share, like, just their life on a regular basis. People think that they have insight into your life, and therefore they know things about you. From the person who's consuming this content, so like young kids who feel like they have these friends in influencers or content creators, whatever you call them, that's not a real relationship.
No, and I think
it's
it just
one-sided.
Preys on the need for connection.
Yes, it's
but
false connection.
We never develop the skills to connect. Actually.
Right.
And
have that be reciprocated.
Yes, and you learn how to, resolve conflicts and get along and compromise and all of these developmental skills that are crucial to, like, emotional intelligence. And the more I know every time we'll go out to dinner, invariably we'll look and there'll be an entire family on their screens or phones, and it's like you're taking something that literally is like eating a meal together has always been, like, socially a very powerful, meaningful activity. And you're reducing it to nothing. Like totally lacking in meaning.
Yeah.
And it's a shame, and we've kind of bought into the idea that it's okay, and
this is just what our new world looks like,
and it's safer. It's only safer. Like, and there was the big scare, I guess probably around the 90s. I don't know if you will remember, but like milk cartons with missing children on them. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen,
Right.
but it's extremely rare.
Yeah.
Especially if you juxtapose it with the number of predators
Yeah.
on the internet
Right.
who are, there is no
Right.
filter or barrier.
Right.
Like they can say whoever they are. Your child has no idea if that's actually another 12-year-old.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, they're getting to send pictures or,
Yeah.
I mean, and we don't, we just think it's okay. We don't.
It's just how it is now. Everyone's
Yeah.
doing it. Or I remember when TikTok first, this was probably 5 or 6 years ago, TikTok first kind of became big. And I had some neighbors around who had like 11, 12-year-old daughters. And so I'm looking out the window and they've got the phone leaned up against like the basketball goal. They're doing some little TikTok dance. And I've always had this idea my kids won't have it for as long as I can put it off.
Right.
And so I see these girls doing this. And so A, I know that they're watching content to learn these dances. And B, I know that they're posting content to share. You don't just record yourself and then save it on your phone. You're putting it out there. So I'm outside having wine with one of the moms one night and brought up that I saw the girls out there doing the TikTok dances. And she was like, oh yeah, they're just having fun, whatever. Well, if you think that your child having TikTok is just them seeing dances and learning dances and having fun, you are painfully mistaken. You don't just find people dancing or people sharing valuable content. There is content that is encouraging self-harm. There's content that is encouraging toxic, physically abusive relationships. I don't just mean sharing about that it exists, encouraging it. And just as I've done in our Instagram stories when I talk about the algorithm on Instagram, because if you say the word algorithm or you type the word algorithm, it picks it up and it kicks it out. So just like I know to type the word algorithm on our stories with a little @ symbol,
Mm-hmm.
people who do that type of content know how to type it on there, either to say it or how to switch it out with an emoji or a word to still get it out there. And so if you think that your kid is confined to fun dances, you are very, very poorly mistaken.
Well, the mental health issues,
Yeah.
especially for girls and boys tend to experience this smartphone, social media world differently.
Very differently.
And girls will find their kind of emotional connections and almost a community there, and the sense of perfectionism in terms of their appearance. Girls' anxiety and depression,
Rampant.
huge, and they've shot way up. And Height and others talk about, like, it's not like maybe there's a slight connection. No, there's a
glaring.
It's like you look at when the use of smartphones and social media became prevalent with kids, it's like hockey stick for both. And nothing else changed in our world but that.
Yeah.
And whereas boys, they tend to play war games and the pornography. Like those are the two things.
Right.
And so boys may not have the anxiety, depression aspect, but they will not develop
the emotional intelligence.
Yes, and they won't. For me, I don't care whether it's boys or girls. Both need to learn to be tough and independent, and brave and good, and to develop those virtues. Well, you get no chance to do any of that if you are spending hours a day in this virtual world that becomes real.
Yes, yeah, it feels very real. You find yourself, people can't sit in silence anymore. They can't sit still. If you're sitting in a doctor's office, scrolling, or it has that one person that I follow so much that they posted anything new. It's this we can't just let there's so many ways to take this conversation. My God,
I know, it's almost like
I'm like I can't stay focused. Okay, this one avenue. I'm going to go down here. Our brains were not made to be constantly stimulated over and over and over on repeat in this way. Maybe true, real in-person stimulation or actual emotional stimulation or conversations or relationships or activities. But this digital stimulation of
getting a notification every 5 minutes
by scrolling someone else's life.
Yep.
No, not for that. Let alone the impact it has on the way that you think about things. So let's say I have so many examples in my brain right now. Where am I going? Sports. Let's say you've got a kid on the way to a game, on the way to practice, scrolling on the phone, get warm up, whatever it is, and they see something that makes them feel bad about themselves, frustrated, angry. They see a picture of their girlfriend with someone else, like whatever it is. Take it with you. How does that impact you on the next activity that you're doing? Same thing with the phones at dinner. Like, I saw this TED Talk. I'm sure I feel like it's always on my feed. But just the fact that our phones are both sitting here on the table says that there's something more important about these, that they need to be available. Like, I'm not my husband's upstairs. My kids are at school. I'm not waiting for a phone call. But this is sitting here. Now, I know that we both have notes and things on our phones that we're referencing. But if we're at the dinner table and I say, you know what, phone face down, it's still there, and your brain is waiting to hear it buzz.
Absolutely.
See it light up, see it flash, look for a notification from X, Y, and Z. And so that TED Talk was saying that, like, if you are going to try to implement this, like, no phones at the table, the phones need to be out of the room. Because the reality is, if we're at dinner and I just keep
calling,
and I just
it's
keep doing
beckoning.
This, it is.
Yes.
Because even if you think it's on silent, you still are going to then pick it up and see if anything's popped up on your screen. So that idea of like we don't know how to not be attached to this.
Yes.
And so how can we possibly be
notes?
Yeah, I know, same. How can we be all in? Do we need to prove this? Do I need to prove myself right now? What's on my phone?
I feel obligated.
I know, it even says social media at the top. It is impossible to be 100% engaged in what you're doing if your back of your mind is thinking about this. I mean, the number of times that I say to myself at night, all right, I'm really, it's 9 o'clock, the kids are in bed, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to bed now. I'm tired. I'm going to go get in bed. And then I lay there for an hour and a half scrolling. First thing I do in the morning when my alarm goes off, turn off the alarm. What do I open? Instagram, emails, text messages, whatever I miss. Now I keep my phone on do not disturb at night. That's something in the last several years that I've changed. I used to let it, you want to ding me at night? I'll at least be notified. And so if we are constantly mentally and emotionally attached to something that is not what is right in front of us, what is that doing? I think it's literally eating away at our brains.
Well, it makes it impossible for us to be present. And it goes back to what you mentioned earlier. When we talk about ways to reduce anxiety, even in terms of how it impacts our health, we talk about mindfulness, meditation, breath.
None of those involve this.
No, and they can't be allowed to happen if we're getting bombarded with notifications all day. I mean, I've talked to people about meditating who they want to have their phone there. It's like, no. That's why it's one of the reasons I'm not big on a meditation with the app. Not, don't get me wrong. John Kabat, Zen he's got an app that's filled with great meditations. So I'm not totally rigid about the app thing, but
you have to be able to mentally disconnect from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like put it across the room or something where you just can't see it. You maybe can hear it. Even when it comes to like going for a walk, going for a run. Don't listen to music. Don't listen to podcasts. Like, just be out there.
Just be out there. Go for the run.
I mean, unless it's our podcast, then you can listen to it
all day long on repeat.
Yeah, over and over.
Give it 5 stars and like it and share it with your friends.
Right. So everything social media except ours. It was funny because I was driving here thinking about all this stuff and how we like.
Yeah. Well,
but I will say, like, I'm not anti-internet or anti-social media. I think you have to make it work for you.
Yes.
Like my feeds, whether it's on X or Facebook or Instagram, they're so algorithmic out that, I mean, I just get like certain kinds of things pop
quotes
up.
And art and books. And,
like that's, and I follow like some strength athletes or different thinkers. And so all of that kind of stuff is what pops up. So what I'm not getting is ways to feel like crap about myself and constant distractions. And that's where you just have to be diligent in making all of this work for you to improve your quality of life as opposed to
just chipping away at you, honestly.
Yes. And that's for kids. I mean, our daughter's 13 now. She's old. When am I going to get a phone? Not for a while. Yeah. And
my daughter's 6, asking when she didn't get a phone.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like you look around like, and
she's like, so-and-so at Kids Club is 7 and he has a phone. I'm like, I don't care about him at Kids Club.
And I don't want this to come across like we're shredding parents because we are not. Parenting is hard.
And again, everyone's doing what feels right for them.
Yes. However, if we would all kind of join forces so that I know Haidt and Leonard Sachs, he written a ton about this stuff as well.
The author of that.
The Anxious Generation.
Got it.
And The Coddling of the American Mind before, which is a great book. He recommends no smartphone before 14, no social media before 16. Sachs at least echoes that, maybe no social media through high school, because of the mental health issues that are at play. Adolescence in and of itself is not so fraught with peril as a stage. However, you are vulnerable to your mind's being shaped, and so you're much more vulnerable at 15 than you are at 35.
For sure.
Like, it's not even close. And so why we would allow these forces, and all these guys admit it. They admitted it years ago that all these things were set up.
Yeah. Yes.
To get a certain kind of result.
Addicted to it.
We just can't allow that to happen to our kids.
Yeah.
And I mean, our kids play some video games, whatever. They don't have phones. They do have a watch that, if we need to get in touch with them, we can. They go to a school where there are no phones allowed during the day, which I think is a huge thing. Like, not having phones at school is a big deal. Yeah. And then, so all these are recommendations in the Anxious Generation. But then he also talks about getting outside, being in nature, being physical. We are physical beings. And P.D. James wrote this book, The Children of Men, where it becomes this childless future. And, it's very dystopian, but powerful book. That's the ultimate end to this whole virtual existence. And that's not why we're here. No. And I have no interest in propagating or promoting that kind of existence. Yeah. And the richness and beauty of this world and this existence that is a blessing. Yeah. And go out and experience it. That's how I want to live. We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Unbound Performance Podcast.
Your support helps us continue to build our community. If you're enjoying this content, please like, subscribe, and share.